Well, welcome to another episode of Longevanity, where we try to combine what is new and most up to date with the current knowledge and science around anti-aging for living your best life. So the focus of our podcast has everything to do with trying to live well, prevent frailty, hormone issues, and all those things that go with it. So thank you so much for joining us today. My name's Dr. Amber Bocknek. I am one of the clinic directors here at Thrive. And we want to talk today a little bit about just general anti-aging, what is known, what can help, and sort of take our discussion and talk from there. So with all of that in mind, we'll dig right in. And what we'd really like to do is try to make sure we're very broad in our coverage and that we cover off a whole bunch of these different topics today. So, new and cutting edge, definitely one of the things we want to try to include is just some lifestyle things. So, what can we do and what role does lifestyle have in anti-aging? Certainly, anti-aging has a lot to do with how we live. So some of the things we can't control. So for example, we certainly can't control um, our genes. We get what we get, and that definitely is one of those unalterables. But then from there, it really depends on how we live our life. So what we do, how we eat, what our lifestyle habits are, all of those things co-contribute. So one of the really important fundamentals is to kind of take a look at our habits. So in this category and some of the different areas that actually have quite a bit to do with how we age include sleep regularity and sleep habits. I know so many people struggle with sleep, but that is actually a legit issue that we have to talk about, because sleep is when our body regenerates, when it heals, when our brain processes new information we've taken in and the like. So sleep is really important. Exercise. Yep. Again, exercise has a lot to do with it. Exercise does many things. It's not just for calorie control and the shape of your figure. It also has a ton to do with your energy efficiency in your body, because that's really what stimulates your mitochondria. And we'll talk a little bit at the cellular level, as well as sort of scaling out from there. But exercise is critically important, and particularly as we continue to move on through our paths, strength training. So that's critically important. Then diet, you are what you eat to a degree, really important. There's some general principles that it's not a fad diet, but there are definitely things you do want to do, and there are definitely some foods you want to avoid. And then from there, we start looking at other things outside of that. Stress management is part of the picture. Supplements, again, some things are very difficult to come by, even with a good set of habits and a balanced diet. The way we grow our food and handle our food sometimes interferes with our ability to get the nutrients, particularly the quantity that is helpful for us. And then we get into the other aspects of it, some of the different things we can do with hormone management, current thinking around that, and other things to consider, such as GLP-1 inhibitors. Do they have a role? Biohacking, some of those other topics. So that's what we're going to talk about today, and we're going to do that all in about 20 to 30 minutes. So we'll dive right in. So let's start with sleep first. So a lot of times, you go in for your checkup and it's just a brief mentioning for the sake of mentioning. Oh, how do you sleep? How's your diet? Are you exercising? Okay, on to the day. These things actually really do deserve a fair bit more time and attention. So sleep first. So sleep is one of those things, I think, for many of us in our modern lives that goes by the wayside. We have a very difficult time managing regular sleep, and that's for a litany of reasons. Our daytime habits have a huge impact on our nighttime performance in sleeping. So it's very important to develop a very almost rigid sleep schedule if you can. And by that, I don't mean rigid in the bad sense. I mean that consistency. So our body is very very programmed to certain rhythms and certain frequencies of behaviors and patterning, and we're very circadian. So our body is designed naturally to try to wind down during the dark hours of the day and be up during the daylight hours. Where this really becomes tough is for those of you who work shifts, particularly if you're on continental shifts. Interestingly, shift work is associated with shorter lifespan and higher incidences of various inflammatory diseases. And I think, again, a chunk of that can be attributed to the fact that the body is being forced into a system of rhythms that's not natural for it. So, where you have the freedom to control your work, life, and sleep schedule, you want to try to do that. And the best practices possible, although I know it's hard to do and you want to sleep in on the weekends, is try your best to try to adhere to normal wake up and go to bed times. We're outside of special occasions. We have to live and enjoy life. So, of course, once in a while, do that. But for most days, you want to try to go to bed and get up at the same time. Second thing that you want to do is prepare your brain for bed. And this starts a good 2 hours before your desired bedtime. We are overscheduled and overly electronically connected, as I say that as we're doing a podcast. But the last couple hours of the night, you want to prepare your brain for sleep. And it's really important to try to get off your devices and stay away from the doom scrolling where you're going through your feed and you're looking at these conflictual things. Again, sometimes the algorithms push you into that, but you really want to stop looking at those things that are overly upsetting, or even if they're very, very positive. If they get you really stimulated, mentally stimulated in one way or the other, either negatively or positively, it doesn't allow for your brain to start to slow down to get ready. The other thing is, if you don't have a blue filter for blue light on your phone or glasses that do that, you want to consider that as well too, because just the blue light and also just the light being emitted from your phone, from your TV, can interfere with your brain's natural circadian rhythms. Your brain's designed to respond to the darkness and the dimming of the light. For those of you who start to feel kind of sleepy at this time of the year when our days are starting to get shorter, especially now when the sun's setting around 7:30 and you're ready to go to bed. That is sort of a classic example of how our body is actually physiologically programmed to time with the sunshine. So the unnaturalness of looking into an illuminated screen, whether it's a TV, a computer screen, or a smartphone, can interfere with your brain's ability to set itself up for sleeping. The brain makes melatonin. Now, you can take melatonin as a supplement, but the brain makes it as well. It's a brain hormone that starts cueing your brain that it's coming time to sleep, and that is triggered by reduction in light, and it is suppressed completely by bright light. So again, you really want to try to make sure that you're supporting that natural brain rhythm and brain function. Why? Why is this important? Sleep is really important because a lot of the body's regenerative processes take place when you're sleeping. Quality sleep the night before affects the quality of your next day. And the real focus overall with all of this is overall quality of life for best longevity. So at night, there's a host of things that are happening. So that's when your cells are sort of recovering, your muscles, if you've worked out, again, they're recovering. There's a lot of things going on in your brain when you were trying to make your brain rest. So memories you've taken in from the day are consolidating. So if you are doing complex tasks or you're trying to learn something new, it's very important that you sleep at night so you can consolidate some of that memory. Also at night, a lot of the brain's lymphatic drainage happens while you're sleeping. So your brain works pretty hard. That little organ takes about 20% of your glucose that you take in every day. So it's just a small little bit of mass or amount of your body, but it takes up very large amounts of energy and it's highly, highly active. So at nighttime, it needs to clean itself out, process everything. And that's what's happening when you're sleeping, or not happening when you're not. So the whole environment around sleep is very important because that helps with your overall brain health. It helps with memory, it helps with cognition, it helps with next day energy levels. So it's really critically important. If you want to learn more information about sleep, there's a lot of different evidence-based descriptions of things around sleep hygiene. So if you use that as your search term, just Google up sleep hygiene, you can find very, very patient-friendly documents about how to kind of clean up your sleep cycle. You also want to set the stage for success. You need your room to be quiet. You need it to be dark because, again, light, even from your alarm clock or your smartphone, that light coming in, well, it can interfere with your melatonin. So again, you can be waking at night. You need the pillow to be comfortable with your neck well supported. Goodness knows, as time passes, those ergonomics catch up with you. So you really want to be aware and do that. You need to make sure the temperature of the room is comfortable. The mattress is comfortable. Again, you spend a good chunk of your day on that mattress. So if your mattress is getting old and you're waking up because you have discomfort points in your shoulders, your hips, your back, you wake up in the morning and you're achy, maybe it's time to invest in a better mattress. So all of these things are really important. So sleep isn't just, oh, go get your sleep. Are you getting your 8 hours? No, sleep is, that's your regenerative time, super important. So if you haven't prioritized it or had a good look at it, and just every day you just kind of put up with it, then these are things you might want to do. If you're looking for a little bit of supplement assistance, then melatonin is an option. Melatonin, again, is a naturally occurring thing in your own body. One of the really important things is to try to stay at what we call physiologic levels. So a physiologic level is something that is close to what you actually naturally make. So most human beings make zero point 0.5 milligrams ish to about one, maybe 1.5. So you really don't want to go super gangbusters in most situations with huge doses of melatonin. If you find something under 3 milligrams or 1.5 milligrams, that is likely sufficient. Melatonin has other benefits, though. It's actually a very powerful antioxidant. One of the few situations where we use really massive doses of melatonin is in cancer situations. There are some emerging studies that actually show the antioxidant properties and some of the other properties of melatonin at very high dose can be helpful as additional therapy in cancer situations. But outside of that, about 0.5 milligram to 3 milligrams max is your best choice. The other thing when selecting a supplement is you have to understand that the way supplements are regulated in North America versus drugs is they're not screened by Health Canada or the FDA. They fall into a different category. So you really want to look for things that are third-party tested. Because with a third party, what that means is that they've gone to an outside regulatory laboratory, presented their supplements, had them independently assess them, and then certify them as actually having in them what they say they have in them, because they have no obligation to do so. And again, they're not regulated the same way. So outside of looking for third-party verification, you really don't know what you have. Just some quick ones that come to my mind, and there are others. In North America, in Canada, that third-party test, that would be AOR. They are out of Calgary, I think. They're a Canadian product. CanPrev, Natural Factors out of BC. They all third-party test. North American-wide, we have Designs for Health. They're also available in both countries, Canada, US, and Metagenics. So, and there are many, many others, but those are just the ones that came to my head. So as long as the ones you're taking have some degree of third-party testing, then at least you can be reassured that you're getting a quality product that has what it says it has on the label. Sometimes you can get melatonin combined with other things. And so there's some other things that may be helpful if you really struggle to sleep. GABA is something that we can supplement that your body also naturally makes. And it's very calming. So if your mind really races at night, you feel like your head's like a stock market ticker tape. I can say I'm in that category every once in a while, a little bit type A, this girl. Then sometimes a little bit of GABA. And there's another substance that, again, can be very calming that's natural called L-theanine. Sometimes you can find melatonin products that have GABA and L-theanine. One of them that I can think of off of the top of my head quickly, or actually two of them. One of them would be Natural Factors, makes a melatonin with, I believe, GABA and L-theanine. And then I think AOR makes a brand, I think they call it Ortho Sleep, and it has melatonin and a few other agents that seem to have some supportive evidence to be helpful overall for sleeping. So sleep, there you go in a nutshell. Very important. Next to talk about is exercise. So exercise is really there's certain pillars of health, and exercise is one of those major ones. If you're hearing this and you're like, oh, exercise, I haven't done it in so long, there's no time, I have no energy, I hear you. You need to start where you're at. So don't go crazy. Don't go gangbusters all at once. If you can do too much of a good thing too quickly. So you have to pace yourself and titrate it in. If you're just getting started and you really want to make some healthy strides, literally and figuratively, then start with walking. Just get walking. Start where you're at. That might be 5 minutes slowly. And then just slowly at your own pace, gently progress. When you give your body a challenge, we are designed to get a little bit of inflammatory response from that. Like the muscles get a little torn and they ache a little bit, but with proper rest and sleeping, they recover and you come back a little stronger. So the deal is you do it slowly and you titrate it. So maybe your first week, you just walk for 5 minutes at your own pace. Try maybe twice a day, morning and night. It's good for your stress level too. But try to get out there and do a little wee bit of walking. Then gradually, maybe the second week, go up to 7.5 minutes. Then the next week to 10 minutes. Then maybe the week after that, 10 or 15 minutes. If you get limited for time, try to walk a little faster. So again, you can start that way and build it up. You want to get going with just the physical activity in general. And then the other thing that's really important is muscle mass, strength training. Those who do cardio all the time are helping themselves, but not nearly as much as those who also combine in some strength training. So that can be in all kinds of different forms. There are many different ways to do this. And I would encourage you again, if you struggle with this, get a trainer. It's a good investment. It doesn't mean you have to spend on it forever, but maybe just getting started so you get started on the right path and you don't hurt yourself. It might be a great idea. Sometimes if you're starting just with walking, well, maybe your first little bit of resistance or strength training is buy a weighted vest off of Amazon. Start light, just 8 pounds, 10 pounds, or get one where they have little weights that you can slowly increase. Again, start real low, gradually build that up. Again, if you're walking and with little weights, you can get little 1 pound hand weights and you can be trucking out there with your little 1 pound hand weights and your weighted vest, but you're going to want to start to do that. There are all kinds of apps online, there are trainers, but you want to get moving with that. So the strength training is really important. You need the muscle mass. You also need the bone density. So whether you're a man or a woman, but considerably more so in women than men, you start to lose bone density as you get older. And it starts early. You hit peak bone mass in both genders around early 30s. And then from there, you're already losing bone mass. So if you're like barely 40 years old, you've already started to lose a little bit. You don't have as much as what you did back then. And the decline is ongoing. For men, because testosterone doesn't jump off a cliff like estrogen and progesterone do for women, the loss is more gradual in men. The loss for women is exceptionally abrupt once you hit your menopause. When menopause happens, then in those first couple of years, we have the most accelerated rate of bone loss, although it still continues outwards from that point at a sharper angle than it did before menopause. But in both genders, you want to try to build that bone mass. The strength training, the resistance, again, forms beneficial stress to your bones, which helps them lay down and more bone, and it slows down the reabsorption of the bone. Quality of life in your future, this is a gift to future you. Quality life in your future really relies around a couple of key things: cognition, for sure, you want to have your mind, and mobility. And mobility means you need a healthy skeleton and strong enough muscles to carry you around without falling. I don't know if you remember in the 90s when they had like those Lifeline and some of those other things. I've fallen and I can't get up. It seems strange when you're younger to think that that's actually going to happen. But as we get older, if we allow our bodies to become frail, that's a legit problem. You can't get up off the floor. And worse would be if you fell and you broke something, a hip fracture. Hip fractures are just not any old broken bone the way you would think of, say, at a younger age, breaking your wrist or, your clavicle when you go into the boards playing hockey. When you're older and you have an osteoporotic hip fracture, about 50% of those people never get their quality of life back, and a good chunk of them actually die from some complication related to that fracture, usually within that year. So it's a big deal. So we want to build our muscle mass. We want to make sure we've got muscles that can balance us, and we want to have strong bones. So exercise has a huge role to play. So those are some key things. Diet is another thing that's really important. Again, you go in for your checkup. Oh, do you eat healthy? Oh, yeah, I eat healthy. I have a bit of everything. Okay, on to the next question. Diet deserves a bit of attention too. So, the simplest diet that's not a fad, that actually has been studied in real medical studies, is basically a Mediterranean style diet. Eat the rainbow, colorful food, lots of different food groups. We like our fishes, we like our olive oil, we like our healthy, free range meats that have not really been heavily supplemented and that aren't getting a lot of feed that is full of other kinds of pesticides and things. So, free range types of meat if you eat meat. And then if you are a vegetarian, being sure you're getting adequate protein through your other sources, whether it be in tofu, legumes, or other. Um, those are really key critical things. And then you want to avoid high glycemic index foods. So basically, low portions of anything that's kind of beige. If it's a beige color, it's usually a simple starch, which quickly gets converted into sugar and raises your blood sugar. So you want to try to make sure you minimize that. The other thing you want to really watch out for is processed foods. So highly processed, highly refined foods come with very little nutritional value, and they often can be rapidly converted into sugar. So let's just kind of chat a little bit about the biochemistry around that. So, in your digestive system, when the food particles go from your stomach into your intestines, they eventually go through the walls of your intestines, the little molecules, as they're being digested, and they end up in your bloodstream, and then you start to absorb them. So, starches, bread, rice, pasta, and potato, are actually just a few little chemical steps away from overt sugar. And sugar is sugar is sugar is sugar. So, whether you get white sugar, brown sugar, honey, maple syrup, it's all basically to your body at the biochemical level sugar. And all of that will start to create a response in your body. Your pancreas is the main organ that deals with it. It secretes insulin, and insulin is used to take the sugar out of your bloodstream and deposit it in your tissues. And if you have an excess of that, or if it happens really briskly, it will coat things up in your circulatory system. We'll talk about that in a second. And it will also be put into storage forms in the form of fat. So let's talk about sugar for a sec and what that does to your cardiovascular system. Because we're thinking about future health, gift to future you. High blood sugar can be very irritating to your fine blood vessels. And so we think that a lot of age-related problems have to do with a lot of inflammation that happens right from the microcirculation, the little delicate blood vessels. They're only about one cell layer thick, the lining of the blood vessel to the blood vessel wall itself that lies behind it. And sugar is highly irritating, particularly at high levels, to the little fine blood vessels. It's that thin layer that's right on top of the wall of the blood vessel on the inside part. And so when that irritation happens, you get little breaks in the lining, and this is where we start to get that hardening of the arteries process going. So when that lining gets a little frayed or a little worn, then we start to get cells and other things migrating from the inside of the blood vessel, where it's supposed to be, into the wall of the blood vessel, where it's not supposed to be. And our immune system doesn't like that. It doesn't like things there that shouldn't be there. So in good course, it sends in white blood cells to try to fight that. And they start to engulf little inflammatory particles. And in doing so, they start to lay down sticky stuff that eventually becomes atherosclerosis or hardening of the arteries. And so this process happens, and it can start happening very young. They've actually got little studies in place now that show early hardening, early inflammation of the blood vessel walls already is starting in our teenagers, and it's just slowly progressive over the years. But this hardening, we may think of it because it hits the literature for cardiovascular disease like heart attacks and stroke. But you've got to know that that's actually going on everywhere in your body. So certain areas are super vulnerable. So brain health, again, cognition, dementia, trying to prevent that. We really don't want those little fine blood vessels in our brain getting all inflamed and getting hardening in our brain and causing little teeny tiny strokes, which accumulate and cause dementia. We don't want it in our eyes, interfering with our vision and our retinas. We don't want it in our kidneys. So again, and with our little fine blood vessels feeding our little teeny tiny nerves at our fingertips and toes. So it's one of those things to live well in the future. We have to invest in our future selves by taking care of us today. So diet and keeping blood sugar under control and trying to avoid highly inflammatory foods, particularly high glycemic index foods, is really critically important. So all those things work together. So that's diet, or at least that's a little bit on diet. There's like, you could do a whole podcast just on diet. Maybe one time we'll do a deep dive and we'll do that. Then from there, supplements. There's a lot of conventional thinking that there's no value in supplements. I think it's really hard to put together randomized controlled trials because these things are expensive to run. And unless you have somebody funding it, it's really hard to recruit and do. But there are some studies that have been done that show that in a quality multivitamin, that can be helpful. So if you were just to do one intervention, because the ground that our food is grown in is not as lush as it was before with the over farming. The meats and other things we have, again, are rapidly farmed. Again, we aren't getting the same nutritional value as we did, and life is busy and we're eating on the fly. So a little bit of supplementation could be a good thing. So again, thinking back to third-party tested products, again, just only quick ones that come to my head, there are many others, would be, again, AOR, CanPrev, Natural Factors in Canada, Designs for Health in Canada and US, and Metagenics, again, in both countries. You can get these things even on Amazon from good third-party tested brands with good quality. A multivitamin would be important. There's a couple other things that are common vitamin deficiencies and mineral deficiencies that you may want to look at. The number one most common vitamin to be deficient is vitamin D, D like dog, all kinds of important immune regulation functions, bone as well, amongst other things. And vitamin B, the B complex vitamins, they do a ton of different things. So you may also want to consider a D like dog and B like boy, a multi in high quality. On the mineral side, our most common mineral is magnesium. That's the one that tends to be deficient the most, although there can be other things. So again, sometimes people look at magnesium. The most bioavailable would be magnesium bisglycinate. Sometimes people use other versions of it. The citrate version can sometimes give you loose stools, so you may want to avoid that. But magnesium. And then good fiber supplementation. So the bacteria in our intestines, and yes, we're full of them, and we're supposed to be. They help us with our digestion. We couldn't survive without them. They need to be well nourished and looked after, and they do really well with some good prebiotic, postbiotic fiber. Now, if you have inflammatory bowel disease, that's Crohn's disease or ulcerative colitis, these may not be for you. But if you have irritable bowel syndrome or just regular sort of twitchy bowels or normal bowels, things like, again, just some examples, Solufiber, that's an AOR brand. It's guar gum. So I know it's a funny name, but guar gum is a naturally occurring fiber that's very healthy for our bacteria. So these are just a few tips and starters just to try to take a look at. Let's get you living your best version of you. Before I leave, I just want to pop up here our upcoming Thrive Summit. This is going to be a free evening, Wednesday, October 22nd, where we are going to talk about all things health and anti-aging. There's going to be some live demos, things to try, giveaways, and just some great solid information. So I hope you'll be able to join us. Thanks again for watching today, and feel free to send us messages. If you like the content, please share, follow, and we'll look forward to seeing you next week. Bye for now.